look like Sophie Cunningham is back in the headlines.
Sophie Cunningham's reputation for unfiltered honesty reached a flashpoint, igniting a national conversation online. The catalyst was the bombshell revelation that NBA player Terry Rozier would still collect his full $26 million salary despite facing federal charges.
Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups look like they both has made bond. Well, look like Sophie Cunningham made it her business to speak on the entire situation.
Sophie refused to stay silent. Her explosive commentary cascaded through social media in minutes, sparking a massive debate about privilege, fairness, and hypocrisy within professional sports. The fan base was instantly fractured, players weighed in, and the story became a national talking point. But the words she uttered next left everyone, including the NBA itself, utterly stunned.
This right here was released, and Sophie commented on it. Let me blow this up here. It says NBA player Terry Rozier will still receive his full $26,000 salary. No, $26 million salary. Sorry about that. $26 million salary while on leave from the NBA after being arrested on federal gambling charges.
The controversy ignited when reports confirmed Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier would draw his full $26 million salary even while facing federal gambling charges. The news detonated across social media. Fans grappled with the hypocrisy. A player accused of illegal betting activities was still cashing in millions while the investigation was underway. This immediately challenged the league's claims of promoting integrity and transparency. The NBA, already under heavy scrutiny for its disciplinary actions, suddenly found itself at the center of yet another credibility crisis.
Now, he's probably still going to see this because he's not been convicted of anything. And that's the only thing I could think of. Now, Sophie Cunningham retweeted this and stated, "No way. Please tell me this is fake." I definitely believe that's real.
Analysts began dissecting the contractual mechanics, revealing his contract was shielded by the league's collective bargaining agreement. Unless a player is convicted, their salary cannot be legally suspended. That legal distinction kept the checks coming, but to the public, it felt like institutional favoritism.
Terry Rozier getting paid while our troops are waiting at food pantries. This is criminal. I have to agree with that. Now, you know, when Andy say that really got you. Damn, you know, that's fucked up. It goes on to say, "Welcome back to Twitter, Sophie. Your commentary is one of the best things on this app."
While some athletes face immediate suspension over minor conduct issues, Rozier's paycheck flowed as if nothing had happened. It was, for many fans, another glaring example of the NBA's double standard. One rule for stars, another for everyone else.
Now, we know that they did their investigation, and they stated Terry Rozier was not in any wrongdoing. So if that is the case, I believe the Terry Rozier situation allegedly is why Congress is briefing Adam Silver, because Adam Silver and the NBA supposedly did an investigation on Terry Rozier, faking injuries, throwing games, and stuff like that, and they said that they didn't find nothing.
As the backlash swelled, the debate soon expanded far beyond basketball. Politicians, military veterans, and celebrities entered the public discourse, contrasting Rozier's financial immunity with the struggles of ordinary Americans who face severe consequences for far lesser offenses. This sparked questions about a system where multi-millionaires remain untouched, while others are left to fight for their survival.
Well, I'm here to tell you, the federal government, FBI, got a 96% conviction rate. Y'all know what a 96% conviction rate is? 96% conviction rate, which means that the government is not going to try anything that they know that they're going to lose, bro.
The controversy reached a fever pitch, with whispers of federal and congressional inquiries demanding answers from the league itself. It was at this critical juncture that the narrative took an unexpected turn. WNBA star Sophie Cunningham injected herself into the debate. Renowned for her fiery personality and unfiltered honesty, Sophie recognized a profound injustice in the story. She refused to let it go unchallenged. With a single audacious tweet, she hurled herself directly into the storm, instantly pivoting the national spotlight from Rozier onto herself.
like I say, Sophie is definitely going to figure out a way to stay relevant, and I commend her for that. That's what you got to do. Like for all the people talking about like rage bait content, and man, at the end of the day, the name of the game is stay relevant and stay trending. And if you ain't trending and you ain't relevant, guess what? That make you irrelevant. So don't hate because, you're irrelevant.
When the story of Terry Rozier's salary broke, a calculated silence fell over the athletic world. A cautious move during one of the NBA's most delicate moments, but Sophie Cunningham does not operate within that sphere of caution. Known for a bold, unfiltered approach, she perceived the situation as more than just another sports controversy to her. It was a reflection of everything wrong with the system. So she grabbed her phone, opened Twitter, and fired off a message that would explode across the internet. "No way, please tell me this is fake." Those 8 words landed with more force than anyone expected. Within minutes, her tweet was trending. Fans flooded her replies, some celebrating her for exposing hypocrisy, others accusing her of chasing attention during the WNBA offseason. But Sophie refused to back down. She followed up, articulating what many were thinking but didn't have the courage to post that it was criminal for an NBA player to get paid millions while troops and working-class Americans were lining up at food pantries. That single comment changed everything. People weren't just reacting to her tone, they were responding to her frustration. She had struck a raw, emotional nerve that ran far deeper than basketball. Sophie wasn't just questioning Terry Rozier's paycheck, she was indicting a culture of privilege that insulates certain athletes while others struggle to get fair recognition. Her words echoed across sports talk shows, podcasts, and debate panels. Everyone wanted to know, was she speaking truth or merely stirring controversy for attention? Meanwhile, WNBA fans rallied behind her. They saw her tweet as a reflection of the wider inequality between men's and women's sports. To them, Sophie's outrage wasn't misplaced, it was overdue. But as the storm built around her, one thing became clear: this wasn't just about Rozier anymore. Sophie Cunningham had ignited a much larger conversation, one that the NBA couldn't ignore. The moment Sophie Cunningham's tweet hit the internet, the basketball world fractured. Thousands of fans, journalists, and players descended on social media to weigh in. Within hours, her name was trending on Twitter and featured in sports headlines nationwide. Some fans praised her for having the courage to call out what they viewed as a blatant example of inequality, while others claimed she was stepping out of line by inserting herself into an NBA controversy. The divide was instant and fiery. Supporters of Sophie applauded her honesty. They pointed out that WNBA players often sacrifice just as much as their male counterparts, but earn a fraction of the pay. To them, Sophie was simply saying what many women in professional sports had wanted to say for years, that the financial and moral double standards between the leagues were impossible to ignore. They called her brave, unfiltered, and a real one for standing up for fairness in an industry that rarely tolerates dissent. But her critics were just as loud. Some accused her of chasing relevance during the offseason, saying she was using the controversy to keep her name in the headlines. Others argued that Rozier was innocent until proven guilty and that Sophie was fueling outrage before all the facts were clear. The arguments filled comment sections, podcasts, and TikTok videos as everyone chose a side. Even major sports pages and analysts jumped into the chaos. Debates raged on ESPN, Bleacher Report, and X Spaces about whether Sophie had crossed a line or started an important conversation about ethics and privilege. Every hour seemed to add a new layer of drama, and every word she had tweeted was dissected by thousands. Yet, amid all the noise, one thing was undeniable. Sophie Cunningham had once again managed to dominate the offseason. Love her or hate her, she was the center of attention, and the story was only getting hotter from here. Sophie Cunningham's tweet didn't just spark outrage, it reignited one of the most heated conversations in sports today: the massive pay gap between NBA and WNBA players. Her frustration reflected something deeper than just one unfair situation. It was a symbol of decades of imbalance that women in sports have been forced to live with. While NBA players sign contracts worth tens of millions, many WNBA players still work overseas during the offseason just to make ends meet. Sophie's reaction to Terry Rozier's $26 million payout hit like a mirror, reflecting that painful contrast. Fans began posting side-by-side comparisons of salaries. Some pointed out that Rozier would make more in a single game than many WNBA players make in their entire season. Others questioned why a league that constantly promotes equality and inclusion still operates on such lopsided economics. The debate became more emotional when Sophie's comment about troops and food pantries circulated. Her point wasn't only about sports money, it was about fairness and values. People started asking, how can the system reward one athlete under investigation while others, especially women, have to fight for recognition and basic respect? Talk shows and podcasts picked up the topic instantly. Former players and analysts discussed how collective bargaining agreements, television revenue, and sponsorship deals all play into the imbalance. Some agreed with Sophie that the principle was wrong, even if the contract rules technically allowed Rozier to keep his salary. Others argued that comparing leagues with different revenues wasn't fair, but regardless of which side people took, the conversation was impossible to ignore. Sophie had unintentionally turned her frustration into a national talking point about equality and ethics. Every comment, retweet, and headline pushed the story further into the mainstream. For the first time in months, the WNBA's voice was cutting through the NBA's noise, and Sophie was the one holding the microphone. As Sophie's tweet continued to circulate, the situation around Terry Rozier grew even more complicated. The federal government's involvement turned the scandal into a national issue, not just a sports headline. Reports claimed that the FBI was investigating potential gambling violations tied to player conduct, and with a 96% conviction rate, the public began to take the allegations seriously. Fans started questioning how deep the corruption might run and whether the NBA had turned a blind eye to protect its image. The silence from league officials spoke volumes. Not a single statement came from the NBA, from Commissioner Adam Silver, or even from the Miami Heat. That silence only fueled more suspicion. Sports reporters pressed for answers, but all they got were no comments. Rumors spread that Congress had requested a private briefing with Adam Silver to clarify the league's internal policies and explain how Rozier was still being paid. For many, this was a defining moment. The NBA had always been considered the model of professionalism and global influence in sports, but now it was facing questions of integrity that could damage its reputation for years. Watching the situation unfold seemed to say what millions of fans were thinking. Her outrage wasn't just about the paycheck, it was about accountability. Why should players, coaches, or leagues get special treatment when ordinary people face consequences immediately? In her eyes, this was a symbol of how money and fame often shield the powerful from the same justice everyone else must face. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The NBA, which often preaches equality and community responsibility, suddenly found itself accused of hypocrisy. The league's silence made it worse, turning a financial technicality into a public relations disaster. And while Adam Silver stayed quiet, Sophie's voice kept echoing louder, bolder, and impossible to ignore. Even before this controversy, Sophie Cunningham had built a reputation for being one of the most outspoken and media-savvy players in the WNBA. Whether it was a fiery on-court moment or a sharp social media post, she always knew how to keep her name circulating. So when her tweet about Terry Rozier went viral, many weren't surprised. They saw it as classic Sophie. Injured or not, she had mastered the art of staying relevant. And once again, she found herself in the center of attention while most players were quietly recovering or training for the next season. Sophie's offseason had already been busy. She'd made podcast appearances, shared recovery updates with fans, and engaged in lighthearted banter online. But this tweet was different. It wasn't playful. It was confrontational, emotional, and politically charged. Some saw it as a calculated move to amplify her voice during the downtime, while others believed it was a genuine expression of frustration from an athlete tired of the inequalities that plague professional sports. Either way, the strategy worked. The entire basketball community was talking about Sophie Cunningham again. Critics accused her of using outrage as a marketing tool, calling her the queen of off-season drama. Yet, even her detractors couldn't deny that she understood how modern sports media works. In an era where relevance equals value, staying visible is half the battle, and Sophie was winning. Her engagement numbers climbed, her interviews spiked, and her name dominated basketball discussions that had nothing to do with her on-court stats. Still, behind the bold tweets and confident tone, there was a deeper reality. Sophie wasn't just chasing attention, she was demanding fairness and visibility for women in a system that often overlooks them. Her hustle wasn't about ego, it was survival in a sports world where silence equals invisibility. And once again, Sophie proved she would never be silent. As the dust settled from Sophie Cunningham's viral outburst, the reactions became more polarized than ever. Supporters hailed her as a truth teller, a player unafraid to challenge double standards in a world where women's voices are often silenced. But critics weren't pulling punches either. They labeled her comments reckless, accusing her of attacking another athlete without knowing all the facts. The online debate quickly escalated into a full-blown war of opinions, with hashtags and think pieces dissecting every word she wrote. Other WNBA players were caught in the crossfire. Some privately agreed with Sophie's message but stayed silent to avoid controversy. A few, however, stepped forward to back her publicly, praising her for saying what everyone's thinking. That support only added more fuel to the media storm. Suddenly, Sophie wasn't just speaking for herself. She was being painted as the unofficial voice of frustration within the women's league. Every comment she made afterward was amplified, twisted, and replayed by sports outlets hungry for headlines. The backlash didn't stop at social media. Certain NBA fans accused her of disrespecting Rozier's legal rights, while others accused her of making everything about gender. The divide deepened, exposing a cultural tension that went far beyond basketball. Sophie's blunt honesty had sparked an uncomfortable truth. Fans love authenticity until it challenges their comfort zone. Meanwhile, Sophie stayed firm. She didn't delete her tweet. She didn't issue an apology. She stood by her words and refused to let the noise drown her message. Interviews that followed showed a calm but defiant Sophie explaining that she wasn't targeting Rozier personally. She was pointing out a system that keeps failing to hold power accountable. Still, no matter how clearly she explained herself, public perception was already split. To some, she was fearless. To others, she was reckless. But either way, everyone was still talking about Sophie Cunningham. Beneath all the noise, Sophie Cunningham's viral tweet exposed something deeper than outrage. It revealed the emotional divide that has been simmering in professional sports for years. Her reaction to Terry Rozier's $26 million payout while under federal investigation wasn't just about one player's situation. It tapped into the frustration of athletes, fans, and everyday people who feel that justice and fairness are often for sale. Sophie's words connected because they came from a place of authenticity, the kind that can't be scripted or manufactured by a PR team. For many fans, Sophie's tweet was a reflection of their own anger. They see a system where millionaires are protected while soldiers, teachers, and first responders struggle to make ends meet. Her comment about troops waiting at food pantries cut straight to the heart of that frustration. It wasn't a polished statement, it was raw and real. That's what made it powerful, and that's also what made it dangerous. In the age of social media, honesty can make you a hero one day and a villain the next. Sophie's stance also forced both leagues to confront uncomfortable truths. The WNBA often preaches empowerment, yet its players constantly battle financial instability and media invisibility. The NBA presents itself as a beacon of fairness, yet moments like this remind fans that money and reputation often outweigh ethics. Sophie's outrage served as a mirror, one that showed how far sports still have to go in balancing image with integrity. By speaking up, Sophie risked her reputation, sponsorships, and relationships within the industry. But in doing so, she reignited a conversation about equality and accountability that resonated far beyond basketball. Whether people loved her or hated her, they couldn't ignore her. Her voice became the spark that reminded everyone what happens when athletes stop following the script and start telling the truth. In the end, Sophie Cunningham's outburst wasn't just a viral tweet, it became a defining moment in the ongoing fight for fairness in sports. What started as frustration over Terry Rozier's $26 million payout turned into a nationwide debate about privilege, justice, and accountability. Sophie didn't just call out a player, she called out a system that too often rewards the powerful and silences the rest. Whether seen as reckless or righteous, her words struck a chord that can't be ignored. One post reminded the world that truth, once spoken, can't be taken back.